Good morning, Dove. I left you a message on your voicemail last night or yesterday. Is that Dove Apter?
Yeah, it's me. Sorry. Oh, I didn't hear the message. Thank you for telling me.
I just wanted to clarify what the issue is with the DAF.
Well, I couldn't hear. I'm not sure, 100% sure it was on my end, but I heard a couple other people making the same complaints. So the audio is really bad from Israel, the situation, and it's such a technical, as you know, Masechet, that when you lose a few words because you can't hear it, it's very frustrating.
Okay. What did it just start yesterday?
Well, apparently, Paul mentioned it was the same. It was even worse on Friday.
Okay. All right. Let me send him an email, and I'll let him.
One suggestion I made to him.
Yes.
One suggestion I made to him was that he use his phone instead of the computer for his audio. He did that, I think, later on Friday. It seemed to work better. I think one of the issues is that he slowed down on Friday, so it got a little bit better because you could, if you speak too quickly, it gets difficult. But one of the issues was that, he shares his desktop, and when you share your desktop, and sometimes it's a lot of wear on your computer if the computer can't handle it.
How do you spell his last name again? I'm trying to remember his last name.
Metzger. I don't.
METZGER.
Is there an L there?
Metzger. No. METZ.
Right.
GER.
Okay.
Well, Izzy, am I right that I noticed that the numbers really dropped down?
Yeah.
I mean, I think we used to have like 18 guys coming there, and I think on Sunday there was something like 6.
And I think we had as many as 12, but it's certainly down.
Oh, okay.
I view it as just getting used to that person. Maybe give this.
Okay. All right, Rabbi Sai, why don't we get started? Does everyone see the screen in front of them? Okay. So
Yes.
the last thing we ended off with on Friday is that there's a prohibition in the Torah of ona'as devarim, of harming someone or hurting someone with words. And Hashem basically says in the Torah that if a person cries out or cries because of their oppression, their verbal oppression, Hashem will respond to that kind of oppression immediately to the perpetrator. Okay, so Ketzad hi ona'as devarim. So let's look at some examples of what ona'as devarim is. Hayu chamarim mevakshim imenu tvua liknos. So let's say someone comes up to you, a donkey driver on the road, okay, pulls down his window on his donkey, and he says, "Where can I buy wheat? I'm looking to buy wheat. It's what I do for a living." Lo yomar lechu eitzel ploni v'hu yodea she'ein lo. So it's usher to say to him, even as a practical joke, "Oh, go to my friend Bob. Bob is a wheat seller. And Bob doesn't sell wheat. Bob has a dog grooming salon," or whatever it is. In other words, you're making a joke and you're sending him on a wild goose chase just so that you can have a joke at someone else's expense. But your intention is to just make fun. And as we'll see, it could be either to make fun of Bob, because Bob will have these donkey drivers come show up at his doorstep asking to buy wheat, and Bob's going to be perplexed and not know what to respond to them. Like, "Why are you coming to me? Don't you see this is a dog grooming salon?" Or whatever it is. And the donkey drivers are going to be perplexed. So you've made a joke on both of them. My kids love watching this TV show that they found on YouTube. It's a cable show. I think it's called Practical Jokers. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's the whole show is about these 5 friends that they've been friends since they're kids, and their whole life is devoted to making practical jokes on people. So it's basically based on a dare. They tell their friend, okay, now you've got to go over to that library and start squawking like a chicken in the middle of the library, but that becomes more elaborate. They'll walk into a place and they'll go over to people and tell them the most bizarre things, and you have to gauge people's reactions, and it's actually quite funny. But when you think about the onas devarim factor, it loses its humor, because you have to say to yourself, there are going to be some people who are going to take this certain scenarios, the person will laugh, but then there'll be other scenarios where you send this person on a wild goose chase and he looks like an idiot, then it actually becomes onas devarim because the person's feelings are hurt. If you take a look at the Biurim, he explains, quoting the Kesef Mishnah, which is a commentary on the Rambam, but written by the author of the Shulchan Aruch. Kesef HaKesef Mishnah, de'efshel lefaresh sheniskaven lavayesh lebal habayes shesholchem etzlo lomer shehu mocher tevua v'hu lo mocher me'olam. So he says, so what is the intent of the guy giving directions, to the camel drivers or to the donkey drivers? He tells them, go to my friend Bob, he sells wheat. Bob doesn't sell wheat. That's not at all what he does. So the objective what could have been to make fun of or to embarrass his friend Bob. Alternatively, the objective is to embarrass the donkey drivers. They're going to come pull up to a guy who doesn't at all sell wheat and say, well, we're here to buy the wheat. And they're going to look embarrassed. So the Bob is going to turn to them and says, what are you coming to me, you morons? Do I look like I sell wheat? Right? And they're going to be embarrassed. So he says, the question that we would ask is, what kind of embarrassment would a person incur just because donkey drivers pull up in his parking lot and say, we'd like to buy wheat from you? If he doesn't sell wheat, why is that an embarrassing situation? Why is there a noas devarim? Like in what sense is Bob going to feel like he's been made a fool of? He says it would seem that based on the language of the Rav Shulchan Aruch over here, that your objective is to make a practical joke. Right? And the point is that if I had respect for the person, I never would have played that joke on him. That's really like, in other words, if this was Prince Charles, would I have played a practical joke on him? And if the answer is no, then it's not permitted to do that. And based on that, even if the person was not embarrassed when he was asked if he had any wheat to sell, or similarly, if the guy giving directions sent the donkey drivers to Bob's house and Bob wasn't even home, and therefore there's no one to tell them, you guys are idiots. Do I look like I sell wheat? No one's saying that to them. Nami avar al onas devarim. He says you're still in violation of onas devarim. Shaharei be'etzem devarav yesh bahem inyan shel hitul uschok mechavera. He says because at the end of the day, there's still an aspect of mocking. There's still an aspect of a practical joke. And he says basically, we'll see more of this later on. A couple of years ago, there was a video going around someone had some guy who does video practical jokes on people, and he posts them on YouTube. He had been in Hamilton and had knocked on someone's door, and it turned out to be Rabbi Green, Zichrono Livracha, from Hamilton. And he was playing some kind of practical joke. And Rabbi Green was already elderly at that point, and he didn't really understand. He didn't really pick up on the nuance of the practical joke. But the guy was saying to him something, I don't even remember what it was. It just that the whole objective was to make the other person look silly, look, to gauge their reaction and to make them look silly. And when Rabbi Green's children, who many of them are members of our shul, saw the video, they were mortified. They felt that this was a terrible bizayon to their father. And of course, Rabbi Green didn't react in any way that brought dishonor to him, but it was still a dishonorable thing to do to an honorable person.
Rabbi, this seems like the old candid camera. So this goes back decades and decades, but I think in those days, unlike YouTube, you had to get the person's permission before you aired it, right? And now
Art Linkletter.
goes. Beg your pardon?
Art Linkletter.
Art Linkletter was a house party, but I mean, candid camera was known for filming people doing strange and
Alan Funt.
That's right. And Durward Kirby. I don't know why I remember these things. That was his sidekick.
Yeah.
But I don't think they'd ever put it on TV unless the person signed a release and agreed. Now with YouTube, people put anything on and embarrass people with no compunction.
Yeah. I mean, you do still have the option of lodging a lawsuit against the person. And I guess the people...
By then, the damage is done, though, sometimes.
Yeah, right. And people post it on YouTube with the assumption that they're not going to get sued. But sometimes people do get sued. In any event, you understand, playing a practical joke on someone at their expense, where they look silly, that's the very definition of a noas devar. Okay, that's at least the first definition. We're going to see multiple definitions of a noas devar. Now, this sort of, someone reading this would say, "Oh, that takes all the fun out of life, right? Right? If I can't play a practical joke on my friends, what's the point? Life is too short. We want to have a good time, right?" Well, it would seem that if all of the friends agree in advance that they should expect a practical joke, maybe that's okay. I don't know. But to do it to a stranger is certainly not going to be permitted. Okay. Okay. So the afal pi sheyachol lehitnatzel lomar lo hayisi savur sheyesh lecha. He says, now even though the person giving directions to the camel driver, Bob is going to come over to him afterwards and he says, "Why did you send a bunch of camel drivers looking for wheat? You know I don't sell wheat." So he could always say, "Oh, Bob, you don't sell wheat? I thought you sold wheat. I'm sorry." He says, and he could always cover his tracks. Hareza davar hamasr l'leiv. He says that's something that only Hashem knows, because it's something that only, because you could always cover your tracks if you see that it backfires. But Hashem knows. If al-zeh nemar, v'yaresa me'elokecha ani Hashem. And that's why the Torah says at the end of the commandment of lo sonu isha samisa, let no man oppress his fellow. It says, v'yaresa me'elokecha ani Hashem, fear your Lord, for I am Hashem. And what that means is that I'm going to know, says Hashem, whether you did this malevolently, maliciously or not. You may be able to cover your tracks and say, "Oh, I didn't know," but I will know, says Hashem. Now, I want to also point out something really interesting. This was actually, this point was actually part of a TV show. I'll tell you in a second. In certain yeshivas in Europe, the way that they did this in Navardik or Kelm, if I'm not mistaken, the way that they did character development, because it was a Musar yeshiva, I believe the Navardik yeshiva did this. They would, the custom was they would tell the yeshiva bacharim in order to develop your character and truly feel humble, you need to make a fool of yourself. So they would send the yeshiva bacher to go to the hardware store and to ask for a dozen eggs, or to go to the grocer and ask for a pound of nails. And so the yeshiva bacher would go to the hardware store and ask for a dozen eggs. And the guy would look at him like he's meshuggah. What are you, crazy? You think that you see, this is a hardware store. We don't sell eggs. You don't go to the Home Depot to buy eggs. You don't go to the supermarket to buy a pound of nails. And it would make them look like idiots. And the whole objective was to develop my character so that I would see, when people look at me like I'm a fool, I will feel like a fool. I will feel like I am a nothing, and that will develop my character to the point where I will feel ich bin a gur nicht, I'm a nobody. Okay, so that was done in certain yeshivas for character development. To do it to yourself, I suppose, is okay. If you feel that you need to lower your gaiva, lower your ego, so then that would be okay. But to do it at someone else's expense is not acceptable. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. V'chein lo yomer lechavero bekama timkor chayfetz zeh v'hu eino chafetz liknoso o she'ein lo damid. To go over to someone and say, how much is this, when you have absolutely no intention of buying it, or you don't have the money to buy it, and you know for a fact that you're not going to buy it, but you're only doing it because you have whatever your motives are, but you're not thinking about the feelings of the merchant. Because the merchant, when he gets a customer interested in an object, even for a millisecond, gets his hopes up. And every time a customer turns his back on the purchase, he has a little bit of a fall of that spirit in even the slightest way, right? And so by you doing that without any genuine interest in the purchase is considered to be onoas devar. And so that's why window shopping is problematic unless it's become such a convention that they invite window shoppers. Ela shekavanaso lahatos es chaver. But your whole objective is to deceive, whether it's to deceive the shopkeeper or whether it's to deceive somebody else by making them think that you're wealthy enough to be able to afford this item. V'acher kach kishlo yikne yakir chaveru sheniskaven lahat oso v'yetzer lo. And then after you decide you're not going, you say, I'm not buying it, the merchant or someone else will detect that your whole objective in asking how much this is was to just play a joke, and it's going to cause him pain. So walking into a very expensive store and saying, how much is this diamond-studded watch, when you don't have the money to purchase it, and then you just, you smirk to your friend as you're walking out because if it was a funny joke, that is onoas devar. Ve'ein tzarich lomar shelo yomar lo divrei kintur af al pi she'ein bahem genus v'dofi sheyesh bo ata shezeh aser mishum lashon hara. He says, it goes without saying, once we've established that you're not allowed to cause someone pain just by asking them a question, you certainly cannot say anything provocative, even though the statement that is provocative does not contain an outright insult or a reflection on some defect that the person has. Because that would be usher not only because of onoas devarim, but rather because of lashon hara. Ella, but rather, what do you do? Shemazkir lo masha kvar haya, that you remind a person, not that there's anything wrong with him today, but you remind him what his origins were, where he comes from. And that will cause a person to feel somewhat diminished, somewhat sort of condescended upon, or make him feel bad. Kigon, im haya bal tshuva, Lo yomer lo zechor ma'asecha harishonim. So, for example, if a guy's a Baal Tshuva, you shouldn't say to him, remember how you used to love eating at McDonald's. Or remember what those Big Macs taste like. Or, Im haya ben gerim, lo yomer lo zechor ma'aseh avosecha. Or if a person is descended from converts, let's say even his father, he's not a convert, but let's say his parents converted. And he says, your parents, while my dad was in yeshiva, your father was, he was part of a motorcycle gang, or he was, who knows what he was doing, But so, O shemazkir lo mashahu ata shelo b'lashon genai v'dofi, ela b'lashon tochacha. Or another example of onoas devarim is that you point out to a person, not insulting him, not saying that there's anything wrong with him, but you point out to him his current plight in a way that he will feel bad. So, for example, you say, Kagon im hayu yisurim bo'im alav. Let's say a person is going through a difficult situation in life. Lo yomer lo kederch shamru chaverav li'iyov. Halo yirascha kislasecha. That you cannot say to your friend who's going through a difficult situation in life, you cannot speak to him in the way that Eov's friends spoke to him. And what did Eov's friends essentially say to him? They said that your fear is your folly. And what they were essentially suggesting to him is that that you were not sincere in your fear of Hashem. And that's the reason why God is not with you, because, you haven't, obviously, Zechor na mihu naki avad, or they said to him, who is innocent and suffers like this? You must have done something wrong. You have to go ask yourself the question, what did you do to deserve this kind of suffering? There is no greater onoas devarim than that. When a person is suffering, to say to them, what did you do wrong to deserve this? V'heim amru kein le'iyov, lefisha hayamatzdik atzma u'marshia midas hadin. Now, why did they say this to Eov? They said this to Eov because Eov was trying to exonerate himself. And he was saying that Hashem has made a mistake. And therefore, they had to say that. I think that what the Rav Shulchan Aruch is saying is that Eov's friends may have been justified in that unique situation by saying that, because Eov had spoken incorrectly by saying that I can't understand why God is doing this to me. I've done nothing wrong. And so therefore, God must have a flawed system of justice. And so Eov's friends responded that, no, Eov, you can't say that. You can't say that God's system is flawed. God is perfect, and his system of justice is perfect, and therefore you've got to start looking at yourself. But if a person doesn't provoke that kind of response, but he's going through a difficult period in life, to just, to say to someone, I know you're suffering, I know you're going through something very difficult, maybe you should think about trying to do tshuva for whatever you've done to deserve this. That's onoas devar. That's the classic onoas devar, is to try to tell someone that they've got to do tshuva for something that they may have done. O sha'omer davar acher sha'al yedei zeh nikar genuso shel chavera, or to say something else to your friend, that through that statement, it's not a direct insult, but through that statement, you're uncovering something derogatory about your friend. Kagon, im nishala she'ila b'dvar chochma. So, for example, let's say a very sophisticated question is asked at the Shabbos table. Lo yomar lemi she'enu yodeya ba'oso chochma ma tashiv b'davar zeh, o ma da'itcha b'davar zeh. It's usher to go over to someone who you know has never studied that area of study, and say to him, "Nu, what do you think about it? What would you answer in that situation?" And you know the person has never. Let's say someone talks about Winston Churchill and World War II, and you just came back from or the person just came back from the Churchill Museum in London and learned a Welt about Winston Churchill and World War II, and he starts talking about it at the Shabbos table, and you turn to one of your other guests and say, "Oh, what do you think about Churchill? Do you think he acted correctly in that situation of the Battle of the Bulge or whatever it was, or the invasion of Normandy? Who knows? I'm not a history buff, and to go over to someone and say to them, what do you think about that?" And you know that this person has no knowledge whatsoever of that area, but you're merely saying it to sort of put that person down because you want to put them in their place in public because they've been pontificating about something else that they do know about, because they were talking about the Medrash on the Parsha, and they were dazzling and impressing everyone with their Divrei Torah, and you want that person to feel, well, yeah, there's a lot of stuff you still don't know. You may know a Medrash on the Parsha, but you don't know about Winston Churchill or whatever. So that is Onas Devarim, right? That's Onas Devarim. So, excuse me. All other kinds of comparable situations are what we call tsar halev, are causing someone to have anguish internally in their heart. And this is true. You can cause a person pain even without insulting them, even without saying something derogatory. And you're not calling him a nasty name. You're not telling him he's an idiot. And you're not embarrassing him publicly. So therefore, imagine how usher it is if you do actually call a person an idiot, or you call him something derogatory, afilu beremes, even alluding to it. Vafilu hu emes, he says, and even if it's true, the guy's an idiot. I mean, he's truly, truly a foolish individual, right? There are foolish people in the world who say foolish things, who act foolishly. We all know who they are. But to actually say it to that person, to hurt them, is completely usher mideoraisa. Ella she'eno avan v'cheta sherchata be'inyan shiroi levazoso al derech sheyisboyer. He says the reason why it's usher is because the person hasn't committed an avera by being an idiot. There's no avera. I guess maybe in a larger sense it's sinful to be an idiot, but he hasn't done anything wrong through his idiocy that it would be permitted for me to rebuke him over his idiocy. Okay? And so therefore, in all of the cases that we mentioned, there's onas devarim involved, and therefore a person has to be very, very careful. And we'll continue this halacha on Yirtzeh Hashem tomorrow. I just have to stop early today because of my next year. And I just want to wish you all a good day. We'll try and be a little bit more conscientious. I certainly can cringe at some of the times that I've said something improper to one of my children. And, we have to remember that onas devarim applies even to our children and even to other members of our family. To be very, very careful about this, Isser. We'll talk about this more in Yirtzeh Hashem tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody.
Take care, John.